Good afternoon. I'm John Forsyte, President and CEO of Pacific Symphony. Happy belated New Year and happy Lunar New Year. We hope that all of you have enjoyed our recent Lunar New Year program, which is still available for viewing on our website, and hope you enjoy the great production that our staff team put together. On behalf of the Board of Directors, musicians, and staff, I want to thank you for joining us for Pacific Symphony's Digital Town Hall, and above all, to thank you for continuing to support and take interest at this incredibly challenging time. Because we treasure our relationship with you, we want to give you an inside glimpse of our considerations and plans. I'm joined, of course, by our beloved music director, Carl St.Clair. And together we hope to update you.
Sorry, I just want to say hi to everybody. I'm sorry to interrupt you, John.
Not at all.
Hello, everyone.
Please use the chat function, everybody, if you have any questions, and we'll do our best to get to them. Today, we want to share our plans for the coming months and the season ahead, and perhaps it'll even be a special musical treat. We're developing our roadmap to recovery, which outlines the steps we're taking to bring music into your lives. And now I want to share a PowerPoint presentation with you, and hopefully it'll illustrate some of the plans that we have made during the last few months. It's very evident to all of us that in just 2 generations, Pacific Symphony has achieved something very unique in American musical history. We are probably the last, or certainly the most recent, orchestra that has achieved major orchestra status. We are now at Tier 1 orchestra as identified by the League of American Orchestras. And the capstone events from 2018 of our trip to China and Carnegie Hall and the resounding response we received in all of these great cities has been extraordinary to reflect upon. And it's only been 2 years, and think about all that's happened since that time. But you, as a community, have nurtured a world-class orchestra, and we are incredibly grateful for that. But you've also nurtured an orchestra that leads. And by lead, I mean nurture, engage, and inspire our incredible and diverse community here in Orange County. And if you just look at these beautiful photographs, you can see images of musicians working closely with members of our educational community, participants in our Santa Ana Strings program at the bottom of the screen. In the lower right corner, you'll see images from Class Act, our elementary school partnership program. And then, of course, we celebrated Dia de los Muertos on our family series, probably over a year ago now. And these are just the many, many programs that Pacific Symphony offers. And I can really tip my hat to Carl for all of the inspiration he's provided, not only to build an orchestra of great artistic stature, but an orchestra that cares deeply about its community. I'm going to speak a little bit about our roadmap to recovery and some of the significant considerations that have come into play. I think you probably know that California is the only state that I'm aware of that has not provided guidance to the cultural community on how and at what pace we are to reopen. In other words, if we hit the red tier, we can perform for this number of people outside, or the orange tier or the yellow tier. That roadmap is critical for the Pacific Symphony to determine how it's going to perform and in what venues for how many people. So just recently, I testified before the State Assembly's Committee on Reopening and had an opportunity to share with them a vision, along with amazing colleagues who were on that call, about how we can reopen. And I think our Assemblywoman, Quirk Silva, who is chairing that committee, was extremely excited to hear from us. And I think we'll be leading an effort to get those guidelines in place very soon. At the same time, we're working very closely with the Segerstrom Center for the Arts, Pacific Amphitheater, and the Orange County Fair, Soka University, and all of our venues to try to identify safe protocols to return audiences to our home. I can say specifically in the Renee and Henry Segerstrom Concert Hall, our primary home, the center itself has done extraordinary studies through an industrial hygienist, and they've identified the level of quality that they have in the air handling. For example, MERV 13 filtration, very rapid air exchanges. So we're very, very pleased to know that that is a state-of-the-art building with outstanding air handling in the main space that we all occupy. And lastly, I'll just say that most recently in Germany, a very important study was done about audiences in concert halls. And what they discovered is it's very, very safe in large volume air spaces like concert halls when you deploy checkerboard seating and you have massed audiences. So we believe it's possible to have, as the COVID tiers permit, to have a checkerboard seating map with 50% capacity, as evidenced by this very, very thorough study that the Germans did in Dortmund. So this was fantastic news. We shared it with our state legislators, and they're looking at it. And of course, everything is going to be wrapped in guidelines that the epidemiological community releases to us. I wanted to just share a few insights on where we are as an organization. Over a 5-month period, we negotiated a new 4-year labor agreement with our musicians. It was a very, very challenging process, not for any other reason that we're living in a time that has no clear playbook. So every issue related to how the musicians come back to work, the safety, the timing, the way they interact with digital media, all of that had to be negotiated, and we were very pleased to reach this settlement in late December. Carl will talk more about this extraordinary moment in just a minute, but just last Saturday, the orchestra and Carl convened for the very first time in 1 year. An amazing historic moment after the pandemic. We released our virtual Lunar New Year video, and that's available on our website until March 14th. And shortly, we'll be having a wonderful array of activities for children and families called our Lantern Festival, which would normally be free and live here at the concert hall, but that is now going to be online for your enjoyment. And with all of that, we have reached over 500,000 viewers on our various platforms. And that does not include the viewership from PBS SoCal and KCE TV and KUSC Radio, which numbers in the hundreds of thousands. But we're really thrilled with this digital reach in 49 countries around the world. Shortly, we're going to share with you information about the exciting new virtual classical series, the Hal and Jeanette Segerstrom Virtual Classical Series, that is now underway in the recording studio of the Renee and Henry Segerstrom Concert Hall. And shortly thereafter, we'll begin recording Pops, Family, Cafe Ludwig, and even our organ series. We'll be sharing information about our 21-22 season campaigns to be launched in March. And of course, our summer season's very important to us. And I think there's some flexibility that will come as the news of vaccine and herd immunity gradually improves. We'll be playing outdoors. So I wanted to ask my colleague, Frank Taraglio, if he would now queue up. I'll stop sharing the screen and ask Frank if he would queue up a wonderfully exciting video. So what you just saw, and Carl, I'd love to ask you to reflect on that, those were images taken from the concert hall just last Saturday, and it was the first time you stood before your orchestra in a year. How did that feel? What was the experience like?
You know, I said several things. I said, first of all, it's been since February 9th of 2020 since I've actually had the opportunity to share music with the wonderful colleagues and the great musicians of the Pacific Symphony. And also, what's interesting about this, since the very first moment we stepped on that stage, before the concert hall was even completed, nothing has been more exciting. It was just the same as stepping on the stage for the very first time again. And even though there were just 13 players and they were all separated and all of the wins, I'm not sure if you noticed, they were playing behind 3 plexiglass panels and all separated. I mean, and I was wearing a mask and everybody's 8 feet apart. The emotions ranged from absolute sobbing, tears of excitement, of enthusiasm, of anticipation to what's to come. But most importantly, it gave us our new beginning. It's a new beginning for us, but also for all of you, our audience, and for our relationship with you. It's going to be different for a while, but it's nonetheless meaningful and important to us.
We took our health and safety protocols extremely seriously. Over months, we were involving UC Irvine's medical staff, their infectious disease experts, to evaluate our specific space and at the same time align with the standards that have been established by the state of California, specifically for the recording studios in Hollywood. So it's under that banner, that recording studio banner, that we were able to return to the stage. And you can see, thank you, Frank, you can see the images there of the plexiglass. I think the scroll through some of these photographs. There you go. So you can see the string group was standing and masked. And we provided little, goodie bags full of, hand sanitizer and things of that nature. And there in the last image, you can see the woodwinds and brass players behind plexiglass encasement, which was a big challenge, wasn't it, Carl? I mean, for all of you sonically to play with tight ensemble, that's a big challenge in that environment.
It sure is, and it threw everybody for a loop for a while until we got used to it. But I will tell you that the sound and the acoustics of the hall really do help us. And you might have noticed little black wires running along the floor of the stage. Each person was actually listening to the other musicians via a kind of a pickup mic in their ear. It wasn't like a click track like in Hollywood or in some studios, but it allowed everybody to hear the totality of the sound, because if you're sitting behind those plexiglass panels, you're only hearing yourself. Especially, we recorded last night two brass works, and if you're a trumpet or a trombonist, for all of you brass players out there, and there's a wall 2 feet in front of you, you know what you're hearing. You're hearing the splashback, but it's no less different for a woodwind or a horn player or any of the other instruments.
All of us who participated in these rehearsals were required to get COVID tested at least 72 hours ahead. And that was a big part of the safety protocols, and we limited attendance, and everything was unidirectional. So as you entered, you only could flow through the hall and the stage in one direction. So everybody exited in that same direction. So it was, it was very tightly managed, and that was very, very important to assure the optimum safety for the orchestra. And you also made the decision in this particular first recording session to separate strings, wind, and brass, just to get used to the protocols.
Yes, I didn't want to mix the wind players, which are kind of called high risk, because they're blowing and there's air coming out and they can't wear masks with the strings. So in our first recording session, we had woodwinds only. Last night we recorded, as I said, brass and percussion. And then we also in the middle had a recording of two works by one work by Mozart and one work by Tchaikovsky, just for strings. And one, the Mozart had also timpani. But so we're going to ease back into it. Next week's program has mixture of brass, woodwinds, and strings for the first time. And by the way, I was there at 10 o'clock this morning and got my COVID test for Saturday's approval.
And if you don't mind me saying, one of the happiest days since this pandemic started was hearing that Carl St.Clair has been fully vaccinated.
Yay! I must say, last night I wasn't feeling that great during that recording, but the musicians, the music, the excitement of it all got me through it. And I'm back to normal today. So please go out there as soon as you can and get vaccinated. It might hurt for a bit, but my wife and I both feel very, very safe these days.
I'm so happy about that. We all are. So speaking of music, Carl, I'm going to ask Frank again to share screen. And we have a listing of, well, first let me just make the unique announcement that we have, because it's actually framed by a very special moment for us, which is that we're going to launch a special platform we're calling Pacific Symphony Plus. And that will be the platform through which we will provide the online, on-demand content that I know we're very excited to share with you. Nice to hear the Tchaikovsky Serenade, and to see now, we were very blessed that Janet Kirchie, one of our beloved donors, was kind enough to donate a significant gift to help us acquire all this equipment. We now have 12 cameras on stage, robotic and fixed. I mean, it's an amazing setup. So we're very excited about that. And we're very pleased to, promote this new platform that will be available for subscribers and donors at no cost. That's the promise that we made to you as subscribers and contributors, that we would offer this reimagined season. And so, Carl, why don't you just walk us through your considerations, the reduced orchestra size necessitated by this, but it also affords us an opportunity.
Well, as you might suspect, being 8 feet apart, 6 feet apart for non-high risk players, meaning string players and percussionists, there's only a certain number of people that you can get back on the stage. So I decided to bring the Pacific Symphony back into your homes and into your lives section at a time. So the very first piece you see there is a serenade for 13 winds. It has 4 French horns, 2 flutes, 2 clarinets, 2 oboes, and 3 bassoons. And this was a piece that Richard Strauss wrote when he was like 17 years old. Like, it's one of his very early pieces, but it's really, really beautiful. And the Tchaikovsky Serenade for Strings is really one of those famous virtuosic moments at the end of his Serenade for Strings. It's the finale. We're only doing the finale because all of our Thursdays at 7 are really curated to only get a certain number of times. We're not going to, it's not going to be an hour of music or an hour and a half plus a lot of talking and a huge education. We want these to be moments that you can enjoy. So for instance, the Strauss is 11 minutes and the Tchaikovsky's 10 minutes. And so we've got maybe 20 minutes of music with a little bit of dialogue, greetings in the middle, but we want them to be something that's really manageable and can fit your schedule. As I said earlier, the next 2 pieces are for brass. The first is Martin Lauritsen. Martin Lauritsen is a dear friend of mine and of the Pacific Chorale, and he's really a crown jewel of composers in all of California and the United States. He retired from the Thornton School of Music last year after teaching there, I think 54 years. He's really a beautiful spirit. And of course, the text of O Magnum Mysterium has really inspired music through the ages, from early music, the Renaissance music, a cappella, ensembles, brass ensembles, woodwind ensembles. And so this is a beautiful, beautiful piece that I know you're going to love. And Michael Daugherty is another composer, also living, that we've commissioned several works of from Michael. And I sent him a little note last night after we recorded. And this is Asclepius. Asclepius is actually, and I didn't know this before, I was just looking for an exciting piece for percussion and brass. Asclepius is the god of medicine and healing. And this piece was written for the opening of the Cardiovascular Center at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, where I taught for 8 years and where Michael is on the faculty. The Mozart Serenade number 6 in D major, the Serenata Notturna, is a piece that I specifically selected for one reason. It features 4 soloists, but not the soloist that you might think. It's not a string quartet. It's for strings and timpani, yes, but it's for 2 violins, viola, and double bass. Now, a little bit later, you're going to hear Warren Haggerty, our principal cellist, but in this particular program, we featured Michael Franz. And I felt so bad for Michael. He came here in January, his very first moments with us as a principal bass after almost 30 years. We had an opening after Steve Edelman, our long and illustrious principal bass, retired. And he played like one concert, and then we were shut down by COVID. So the very first time you will hear the Pacific Symphony strings, you're going to hear our principals, including Michael. And of course, the Petite Symphony of Gounod Charles Gounod is also for winds. It's something that we recorded when we recorded the Strauss Serenade for winds for 13 winds. It's for 9 players, 1 flute and a woodwind octet. And it's just a happy-go-lucky, charming little hors d'oeuvre, a little sorbet after this incredible serenata. You know, Stravinsky has a very close connection with California. And again, this is the work not just for orchestra. It's a work for a string quintet of soloists and strings, and has prominent roles by oboe, flutes, trumpet, trombone, a major solo for double bass. And it's just a very, very colorful work that Stravinsky wrote after the whole tale of Pergolesi. So it's Pulcinella. And then on the 25th of March, it's all about going to France. I was just thinking about France and Rouge Champs-Élysées. And so we chose a couple of selections from the Mother Goose Suite of Maurice Ravel and Satie Gymnopédie number 3, and also an arrangement of the Berceuse finale and, the Infernal Dance, Berceuse, and finale of the Firebird Suite. Now, you might notice by Ravel, there's Fradiani, there's another name, and by Satie, it's Debussy, and by Stravinsky, it's Schaeffer. The reason being is that we can't do the full orchestrations of these. So they're too big and would not be allowed on the stage. We wouldn't have enough room for all of those players. So they're very fine orchestrators who have made arrangements of these great works for a smaller ensemble. And so that's why you see these names. And then, you know, in our major subscription season, we don't get a chance to do enough Johann Sebastian Bach. So I wanted to really do a whole concert. So we're doing the Brandenburg Concerto number 2, of course, which features 4 of our soloists, trumpeter Barry Perkins. You saw a picture of our principal trumpetist a little bit earlier, violin, Dennis Kim, and oboe and flute. And it's a wonderful concerto, one of the 6 Brandenburgs that I know you will love. And then the Bach Concerto for violin and oboe in C minor will also feature 2 of our soloists. And then Claire Huangxi is going to come out, quarantine herself. She's going to be in Philadelphia, and she's going to fly out, come out early enough to quarantine and play the piano, the keyboard concerto number 1 in D minor with us. So this is a whole concert of just the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. So, and is that all we're going to talk about right now? We're not going to give out any other secrets?
Not yet.
Okay.
I would say,
there's more to come after that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think one of the great gifts that you bring to our organization, Carl, is that you have a lot of experience conducting chamber orchestra repertoire. You were a music director of a chamber orchestra earlier in your career, and in a way, it's a real joy, frankly, to hear the intimate works that you've just described. I think it's going to be exciting with our, very well done production standards, I believe that you'll all enjoy. It's going to be a great gift to really hone in on the talents that we have in our orchestra.
Well, one of the things about this is that Ted Ancona is recording this as though it's a studio recording.
Right.
And with our advancement in all of our equipment, we have 12 different cameras going at any given time. So all of our production is going to be not only visually, but sonically much, much, much more like it would be if you were just sitting in the concert hall.
So I thought this would be a good time to, since you talk so extensively about music, I think maybe we should share a musical moment. And, at the center of the Pacific Symphony's work, of course, are the women and men of the Pacific Symphony, the musicians, of course. And we are so blessed to have a number of brilliant artists in their own right. And it's been a pleasure to hear these quarantine clips we've had where individual musicians or small collections of sometimes spouses have played together from their living room and shared their artistry with us during the pandemic. So, Carl, why don't you introduce our guests and we'll hear some very special music.
Warren, if you wouldn't mind to open your window so that we can see you. Hello, Warren. It's great to see you. I'm sorry that we have to see one another so often, on these little boxes and everything, but you have to know how missed you are. And of course, I'm speaking now to Warren Haggerty, who last season became the principal cellist of the Pacific Symphony. I mean, we are just so delighted that you're with us, Warren. What you've brought, the integrity, the musical, and the honesty it's just been fantastic. You, of course, have a huge background in string quartets at Juilliard, and you had a professional string quartet that toured internationally. But right now, I'm just happy that you were here. And during the pandemic, I know that you put online and streamed. Wasn't it all of the Bach unaccompanied?
Yes, it was.
How many minutes of music is that? I remember it's got to be hours, right?
I think it's over 2 hours somewhere, including all of the repeats. Yeah.
Can I ask you, did you do that all from memory?
No. If you look closely in the videos, there's one suite, the fifth suite, that you have to tune one of your strings down, and it changes all the fingerings. And I was doing one every day, and I couldn't get it quite in time to be by memory. So I kind of snuck the music in the corner there, and you can kind of see that. Also, I'm wearing glasses in that one, but the rest of them are from memory.
Well, I know from other cellists around the world and friends of yours that's like going to an altar when you play the music of Johann Sebastian Bach. And for those of you in our gallery this evening, just so you know, Bach is almost the last thing everyone is asked to play at an audition. And I think that was one of the final things that you were asked to play as well, Warren, when you did such an incredible job of awing the committee. Warren holds the Catherine and James Emmy endowed principal cello chair. And Catherine and Cameron, if you're there, I know that I talked with you earlier today. And if you're out in Hawaii, I know it's raining like mad up there right now, but if you're out in the gallery, we want to just extend our thanks to you and our love to both of you, and hope you can come back to the mainland soon and hear the orchestra. So Warren, you want to tell us what you're going to perform?
Sure. Well, thank you so much for having me, John and Carl, and so wonderful to be here with everyone today. Today, I'd like to play for you a movement from the first Bach cello suite in G major. This is the Allemande movement.
Oh, beautiful.
Yay.
Thank you.
Lauren, that was very special. Wow. And what most people don't realize when they hear a piece like that is that when you look at the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, there's nothing. There's no crescendos, diminuendos, dynamics, phrasings. You're doing all that interpretively from your own intellect and from your scholarship, and but also just from your musical spirit. Am I correct about that?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I'd say a lot of it comes from I've just had so many wonderful teachers and mentors throughout my life, especially when it comes to the music of Bach, and just listening to the many different recordings out there. There's so many different takes on Bach, and I just love to listen to how differently everyone plays it, and I'm so inspired by that. So, but it is a good point that there are no dynamics or anything written at all. There's slurs and things like that, but yeah. That's a good point.
It's just gorgeous, and I really, really appreciate it. And I can't wait to be back with you as soon as possible.
Thank you so much for having me today.
And hopefully when I see you, I can give you a big hug and not just some kind of elbow bump with a distance. So
yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Be safe.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lauren, thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
We've received a couple of questions, and I thought it might be opportune time to just answer a few. And the first, an obvious question that someone asked, and I really appreciate it being put forth, is really what does vaccination mean to an orchestral institution? What does it mean to the musicians and to the audience returning to the concert hall, and when might that be possible? And I think, I'm not an epidemiologist, I'm not, a public health expert, but I can say, having read like many of you have, what Dr. Fauci has said about the vaccination process is that, there is this notion of reaching a critical mass. And when we reach, whether it's 75, 80, 85% of vaccination levels, we reach a certain level of herd immunity in our communities. And that may afford us a completely different paradigm than the safety measures, that the mitigation efforts that will be required before that time. So if an individual is vaccinated, they may feel, much more comfortable coming to a concert hall or to an outdoor venue or to an event. But we have mitigation mechanisms that includes, as I said, the air handling in the concert hall, which is exceptional, masking, hygiene. And when we read the surveys that many of you have responded to, and we really appreciate it when you respond to our surveys, we've learned that there are certain measures that we will take that will help you feel more comfortable in the hall, and that is a commitment we're making to all of you. But I think that from what Dr. Chow has said, our local health official, his objective, and I know it's to some extent a pin in the calendar, but I really love this symbolism. He said by 4th of July, he wants all of Orange County to be vaccinated that is, of the age that's appropriate to be vaccinated. And I think if we can celebrate our country's independence at a moment, together with the moment that we know that we as a collection of communities here in Orange County have reached that level, that would be an extraordinary milestone. Beyond that, I think as we move through the summer months, we're going to gradually be able to hopefully introduce more and more audiences in our outdoor venue, which was another question that was asked, was what does it mean to play outside? Are there plans? And of course, those of you who have subscribed to the Symphony know that if you subscribe to the 2020 summer season, we basically have promised you in 2021 essentially the same season. And so your subscriptions moved automatically to 2021. Now, obviously, we will be monitoring our ability to return in exactly the time and exactly the locations that we've promised, and we'll keep all of you informed as it's possible to move to the Pacific Amphitheater or other outdoor venues that we play in, like Oso Viejo Park and Mission Viejo. So we are monitoring this constantly, and we will gradually communicate our plans to reunite you as a patron base with live music. That's, of course, our objective.
And of course, John, I see some other questions about, have you tested the filters for this instrument or the French horn filters? And we've looked into just about everything, and we've tested with smoke test in our concert hall any number of times. And what we have done is we've agreed upon something that everyone feels safe, including our musicians and especially our musicians. And so right now we're having to work under those particular guidelines, which won't probably be changed until something happens that allows us a little bit of alleviation of these very, very strict rules and protocols.
Undoubtedly, there'll be a moment when the orchestra, as a body of individuals, will be fully vaccinated, just like the public. And I think that in turn guides, decisions locally, but we're really guided, frankly, by what the state and the local health officials tell us we should be doing. And we have to adhere to those guidelines. And that's, as I said, we are adhering to what are the recording studio guidelines here locally.
And just to say, I'm just as jealous and envious and a little bit frustrated that I can go online and look at an orchestra in another country and they're all sitting side by side playing, big time repertoire, without masks, some of them a little bit distance. So I'm a little jealous of that, but we'll get back to that. I promise you. Our day will come.
For sure. I'm going to share screen again and just remind you that one of the most important parts of the Symphony's work in the community, its artistic work is really driven by one of our largest fundraising events. And so, our opening night was completely virtual, although we did have a few gatherings that were socially distanced, but predominantly the majority of people viewed the opening night of the Pacific Symphony online. So we're hopeful that by June, if the vaccine trajectory and herd immunity is there, that we can, in fact, gather together in Oso Viejo Park for a live performance of the Pacific Symphony and a major fundraising event to help sustain the Pacific Symphony going forward. So we'll be honoring Ling and Charlie Zhang. And I think if many of you have tuned into some of the exciting news from Pacific Symphony, you'll know that the Zhang family donated our home to us. And we have a new administrative headquarters here called the Zhang Center, and we're very, very honored. I wanted to mention that the Pacific Symphony's finances, they've been challenged, of course. You can imagine our normal pre-pandemic budget was $22 million, and it's dropped down to $12 million. Earned revenue is limited now because ticket sales are not occurring to just the digital offerings. And that the Symphony is relying almost entirely on philanthropy. And we want to thank all of you who have made donations to the orchestra and let you know that we have a very unique opportunity in the coming 6-month period, roughly till the end of June. And that is that Mary and John too have issued a dollar for dollar challenge grant up to $1 million. And John and Mary are two of our most impactful donors, beautiful people. John is an amateur drummer, a curator of rock and roll, has been featured at our galas. And Mary is an outstanding philanthropist and community volunteer. And with people like John and Mary and Charlie and Ling and so many of our donors, we can reach this $1 million challenge, which is so important to us. So with that, I wanted to make sure that we had more opportunities for questions. I'll stop sharing the screen and also just invite Carl to begin to reflect a little bit on the 21-22 season and how that's unfolding in your thinking, particularly the classical concerts.
Yeah, and just before I do that, John, I just want to say that John and Mary too are just such great fans of the Pacific Symphony, but more importantly, they understand from the bottom of their hearts how music can affect and influence lives and how important it is to our community. As John tells me, music is life. And so I do hope that people will follow his lead and take advantage and take part in this challenge grant, because he's a firm believer that the Pacific Symphony and all that we do and is something that this community not only needs but deserves to have. And we hope that we have earned your trust enough to have you participate in it. You know, 21, 22, I mean, I have to be positive. I have to think, you know, like everything, or at least things are going to get back to some sense of normalcy. So right now we have none other than Manny X, who we've planned to open our season. We had the Naughton sisters, the duo, the piano duo, and they actually flip-flopped. And so they're going to come to us in January. But Manny X, who of course is one of America's great pianists, is going to open our season with a Mozart piano concerto. We're doing a world premiere. It's called Tower Ascending. And I thought this is a perfect title and it's a great piece. But I also wanted to start our season with something new because it is new. It's a new beginning. It's a new horizon that we're looking toward. And then when we do that sort of thing, then we know there's going to be something on the second half that everyone loves, and it's the Tchaikovsky Symphony No. 5, which I haven't done with the musicians of the Pacific Symphony for quite some time, so I'm really looking forward to it. Other highlights, I'm just going to do the highlights because we're still working to finalize some of the details because everybody had to shift their schedules. I mean, my schedule has shifted all over the world, so we're trying to fill in some blanks, but Beethoven's Eroica Symphony, you might realize that the Beethoven Eroica Symphony was written started in 1803 and was premiered in 1805, and it was written right after Beethoven wrote this incredibly intense letter about his deafness. It's called the Heiligenstadt Testament. So out of this absolutely devastating, problem that he had with hearing, and of all people, Beethoven had hearing issues, he wrote this heroic symphony. And in this symphony, for me, Beethoven is the hero. And so I just think that we need to take heed and take a lesson from that out of this pandemic, too, something really important, something really creative, something really positive is going to come out of that. The Organ Symphony, we need to hear our organ. Not very long ago, we lost our dear friend, William Gillespie. I've had for almost 30 years the William Gillespie Music Director's Chair. And of course, it's the William Gillespie Fisk organ that you so often hear and see so majestically placed in our concert hall. So we're doing the Organ Symphony. Mahler Symphony No. 4 is going to be there. James Innes violin is coming back to us. I mean, and Dave Ivers, the director of the South Coast Rep, he and I are going to join together to do a Mozart Requiem, where he is actually going to be Mozart and Salieri. It's going to be great. We just have so many wonderful things. Sir James Macmillan has written us a piece that we're going to premiere with the Pacific Chorale, our dear friends, which is called Fiat Lux. And man, we can't have enough light in this world today. So this is one of those world premieres that will have international kind of international attention because of his statue. We've also commissioned a couple of works. John Weinglass has written us a work. We have so many different things coming up in our season that we're going to place together. And of course, opera will be there. We haven't quite decided yet. It's either going to be Rigoletto or Otello. We promised to do Otello last season. So we're working with the various cast members to see which ones that we had already engaged can join with us. And if it's the right set, then we will do that. If not, we might switch and do another great Verdi opera, Rigoletto. Either one, you can't go wrong. And so we're going to finish with something I really, really was sad. You might not realize this, but on February 11th, Alexander Romanowski landed, having flown here from Switzerland. Pardon me. He stayed in the Westin Hotel for 2 days, and he got on a plane and he went back. He got here just before they closed the border, and he left just before they stopped people from leaving. And he was here to play all 5 Beethoven piano concertos, along with the 8th Symphony and some other things. So we're going to conclude next season, that I do know, with Alexander playing for us all 5 Beethoven piano concertos. So our Beethoven Festival will be rejuvenated and will be placed into next season. So there are just so many wonderful things and guest artists. But I can promise you, be with us. It's going to be a season not to be missed. And what a moment of jubilation it's going to be just to be back with one another.
Can't thank you enough, Carl. You know, for those of you who are unaware of what he's been doing behind the scenes, you know, he's been a rock for all of us as we've navigated this very, very difficult time, providing constant inspiration to the staff and musicians and volunteers. And, you know, Carl's been exceptionally busy, also, you know, providing his wisdom to universities all over the country. And so I just, you know, from the bottom of my heart, Carl, thank you so much for your continued leadership. It means so much to collaborate with you. And, you know, you've said this and I've noted it, that in the history of the Pacific Symphony, in the 41 years of our history, there's been 2 music directors, there's been 2 executive directors, there have been only 2 principal pops conductors.
Right.
And our beloved Richard Kaufman is celebrating his 30th anniversary, and that was to be this year.
Right.
And unfortunately, that couldn't happen. So we've decided we're going to pick it up and we're going to celebrate his 30 years with the orchestra next season with our pops offering. And it kicks off with David Foster, and we'll have Midtown Men, the amazing performers who were in Jersey Boys on Broadway, the original cast, Cirque de la Symphony, music of ABBA. And I want to thank Tom and Sharon Malloy. They've been amazing supporters. They have underwritten the Pop series. Terrific people. Our family series will be launched again. We'll be offering virtual family concerts that haven't been announced yet, but we'll be recording those this spring. So we really care about and love our family audiences. And thanks to Farmers and Merchants Bank for continuing their steadfast support of the Family Musical Mornings. And as you said, Carl, the Hal and Jeanette Segerstrom Family Foundation Classical Series, that family and that series have been inextricably linked. But we have many, many donors who have supported the classical offerings, which are, you know, folks, we rehearse 4 times for a concert. We have a hall to rent, the beautiful Renee and Henry Segerstrom Concert Hall. Without great philanthropy, we cannot produce these concerts. And so again, I want to thank all of you. I know many of you are donors. So from the bottom of our heart, every gift matters. It's not just the 6-figure, 7-figure donations that we love, but it's the $10 gift we get from a new donor. And we all call it out every day. We look at our list of donors and we say, my goodness, a new donor, and we're so excited. So we thank everybody who supports us, especially at this very, very challenging time with the orchestra. I know we're going to come back stronger because we have all of you as our dear, dear beloved patrons. We can't thank you enough, and we can't wait to see you in person. So we have just a few minutes left, and I wanted to respond to a couple more questions that came in through folks. By the way, most of the comments have been really touching to read, that, you know, tears have been brought to people's eyes to see, you know, to hear live music, to see your face, Carl. You know, thrilled with the way we've managed through all of this, but, you know, we're all emotional when we can see you, and we can't see you because we're on this special Zoom format. So we look forward to seeing you again. One question we were asked was, you know, what's it going to be like when we come into the hall? I mean, what's the experience going to be like for people? And, you know, I think many of you have gone into retail establishments or you've gone to a restaurant. This is a whole different level that I think the performing arts are looking at. Number one, everything's contactless. So you're not going to be exchanging tickets. You're going to have things presented to you on your mobile apps, or you'll have a piece of paper you'll be scanning. So we don't have that contact. There'll be a lot of opportunities to keep distance. That's very important, especially in the lobby. We'll probably have staggered arrival times. That's something we're considering. But one of the big issues that we're going to be working with our state on is, in fact, what is the seating? And we've been asked a lot about socially distanced seating and how that's going to work. And I just want to reassure our patrons, those of you who are subscribers, you will have the first opportunity to exchange with us when you can go, what night you can go, so that we can accommodate the people that have been long time subscribers to the institution. It's very important that we honor your commitment. So that's something I wanted to be able to communicate. Obviously, we're working very hard to get to 100% capacity. That will be our ultimate destination. And frankly, the outdoor venue will afford us a lot more flexibility. So some events will be rescheduled where necessary in our outdoor venue as well. So all of that is fluid based on what happens with the protocols that are passed down from the state. Carl?
You know, I'm just answering a couple of questions just by text. But, you know, the question is like, well, have you considered like a Mozart piano concerto or something like that? And the answer is, of course. But for now, I just want to say, I want to feature my musicians. And also, I will also let you know that the protocols for quarantining, I just canceled the concert today in Taipei because they expect 14 days in a hotel room locked with bringing 3 meals a day, no maid service for 3 weeks plus 7 days of what they call self-health management, just to do 2 concerts. So some of these things are just not, they don't fit into an artist's life and schedule. And it's just not worth it to come and say for 14 days or 12 days or 7 days or whatever the quarantine regulations are. So having outside artists or artists that are flying in, like I said earlier, Claire's coming in, but she's agreed to quarantine for 7 days. So it's really curtailed outside of Europe and Spain and other countries, Italy. Yeah, there's a little more of that going on over there, but in America, it's quite tedious at the moment, especially in the state of California.
You know, I think you just raised such a great point, Carl, which is the world is approaching this. Every country is approaching it seemingly differently.
Every
so
state.
We have every state. And, you know, the fact of the matter is Taiwan has had an incredibly low level of COVID because they have been so strict from the beginning. You know, we're all in this together. And, you know, one of the things I said to the state assembly is that we as a symphony family can demonstrate the best behavior, the most communal behavior by taking care of one another and practicing all the safety protocols when we come to the hall so we can enjoy music and be safe. And so that means if necessary, we're all going to wear masks. We'll keep our distance. We'll enter carefully, but we will enjoy beautiful music together. Our ears aren't covered. Our eyes aren't covered. Our hands, we can still clap, and we will be together. And that is the most important thing, is the community that we share when we listen to music and the inspiration that you as an artist, Carl, and all our musicians share with us. So,
well, you know, there's so many things
special.
that have been removed from our lives.
Yes.
But the one thing that hasn't been taken, and you just mentioned it, it's the gift of music. And through this great gift of music, a lot of things can be accomplished. Friendships, mutual respect, all of these kinds of embraces can happen through music, and sometimes only through music, or music can do it only in this very, very special way. So I agree with John, and I want to echo everything that he said. Our staff has just been tremendous. I mean, they have turned on a dime and have become quite the production team rather than the concert producing team, but they've become the virtual production team. And John, you've kept your thumb on the pulse of everything that's going on with every orchestra, not only in the United States. So I can just assure everybody out there that everything that everyone's doing is to preserve your symphony, so that when we do come back, you know who we are and you know how important we might be and can be into your lives. Thank you.
Just by close by saying, you know, Carl, thank you so much for those words. And I would echo your comment that we have an amazing staff team. They, you know, from the finance staff, the marketing team, the development team, education, community engagement. What you all don't realize is right now, the education community engagement team are becoming a digital production company to provide free digital content to schools, providing live virtual lessons to our musicians at the Boys and Girls Clubs. Our Arts Express Summer Immersion Camp has had alumni meetings since last summer online. we have been so active, and ironically, you know, given that we're not producing concerts like we have, we've been incredibly busy being a digital production company and learning how to do it. That's not our expertise. And frankly, we're getting better and we're learning as we go through this process. And I believe that digital work will be part of our future, and that for people who are tenuous about returning, we will have online options for people. And that's important to keep in mind. I think it's very important to keep connected to our audiences as we make this gradual return together. We're almost out of time, so I want to just say again to Carl St.Clair, a dear colleague, to the staff behind the scenes, to our incredible board of directors who are so generous and so helpful in guiding us through this time. And to all of you, the patrons we adore and love. The reason why we're here is because of all of you. We want to say thank you. We want to say, please be careful. As soon as you can get vaccinated, please get vaccinated and join us again for live music. We love you and we miss you, and we're going to be back stronger than ever. Thank you very, very much. Have a great evening.
Thanks, everybody.